There are forces around us that we can feel, hear, and see, but to some, there is no explanation as to why. This podcast discusses everything that we, as a society, are taught to doubt. We interview our science and data-driven co-host to see if we can shift his perspective and get him to embrace the alchemist within. Gods and goddesses, divine power and status. We are never truly alone during spellwork when we call upon our favorite deities. Hello and welcome back to The Alchemist and the Academic. I am your host, Rebecca Finale, your alchemist, and I am here with Kurt Braddock, our academic.
Busy academic these days.
Yes, very busy. We apologize for the delay last week.
But you got the emotional support pickle.
Yes. Officially our mascot, the emotional support pickle. So, this week's episode is going to be about deities. And I have a couple that I work with that we are going to discuss. And Kurt is also going to ask some questions. And it's going to be more of a discussion.
Yeah, we decided just now. Really, I was like, "How am I going to how am I going to critically interrogate Becca about deities?" And I realized there's no real interesting way to do it, but I think they're cool as shit, and I love the idea of them. So I'm really interested in how Becca uses them, and kind of. Very much like in the last episode, like how the different candles, one of which is really flaming right now.
I know.
How different candles mean different things. I'm going to ask Becca about her experiences with different deities and when she invokes certain deities, what her experience was. So
Yes.
I also want to, we're going to do a separate episode. We just decided as well, we're going to do a separate episode on angels and demons.
Yeah. That would be in series 2.
Series 2, but I'm going to ask some questions about some of the... less friendly deities that I know about, if Becca knows anything about them.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really like me using Becca as my personal Wikipedia page.
So this is going to be fun. I'm very excited to dive into these and, like we said, discuss the different deities that I have lined out and how I use them in my rituals, what they stand for, their origins, all that fun stuff. So before we get into it...
I was wondering if you're going to remember.
Always. How could I forget?
What are you drinking, Becca?
So today, Kurt bought some fun seltzers. So I'm having my vodka soda extra lemon, but the club soda is actually lime and mint flavored.
Yeah, and I have vodka soda, lime mint flavor as well, but no lemon.
Very refreshing.
Yeah, and it's worth noting Becca is using my New Jersey Devils hockey glass. Becca went double.
Yeah, I did. It's been a week.
It's been a week. I went single, but I might have to go for a second. But yeah. In any event, episode 6, Deities.
Deities.
Best part of the show. So before we, instead of just jumping into the deities themselves, if I can ask you a couple of things about not your experiences specifically with deities, but how you use them generally. Mm-hmm. We talked last time about the rituals that you do, specifically building an altar and
right.
and other kinds of rituals. But when you're in the moment of invoking a deity, or is summoning the wrong word?
No, you could, use that.
You go, hey,
yeah,
come here, I could use you for a second. So, what does that look like in the actual ritual? I imagine there's some language that goes into invoking the deity, but I also imagine there's some internal reflection that goes on? What does that look like, generally speaking, without any specific deity in mind?
Right. So it really is up to the practitioner. I can speak on my behalf how I do it. Usually I'm sitting at my altar, and depending on who I want to call upon, I will have an element that aligns with them.
Okay, so like a specific earthly object or something like
yes.
that? Okay.
And
okay.
I have all of those, like we'll get into all of that for each one. But like, for example, if I want to work or call upon Persephone,
Mm-hmm.
I'll have like a pomegranate.
Oh, is that her thing?
Or a narcissus. I can never
Narcissus?
pronounce it. Yeah, narcissus. I actually have one tattooed on my arm for her. But yes. So each deity has different symbols, and I'll just use one of those to invoke them, honor them. And it usually has some sort of representation as what I'm trying to achieve with the spell that I'm doing.
I'm curious as to when you're invoking different deities. Again, generally speaking, not anything specific. Like, what are you? We know you don't do spells to harm anybody, but what are you doing generally when you invoke the different gods, goddesses, or whoever?
So the ones that I use it depends on what spell I'm doing. They all have a significant purpose, but as I was writing down all the ones that I use, there's a common theme where it's all like divine feminine energy.
I would say, are they all women?
Besides Odin.
Are they all female?
All female, besides Odin.
Okay.
But so depending on the spell that I'm doing, like if it's, to bring abundance, if it's to clear energy, if it's to get rid of fear, whatever it is, that will determine which deity that I call upon.
Are the gods and goddesses you invoke? Let's leave Odin aside. He gets his own shit all the time. He's in the fucking Marvel universe, so we're gonna set him aside for a second. Do the different women have different levels of, like, I imagine they have different focuses and what they're used for, but do they have different levels of strength? Like if you invoke one goddess over another, are you invoking a stronger reaction?
It's hard to say because there are some that have very similar, qualities of why someone would invoke them.
Mm-hmm.
But they differ slightly because they come from different origins. But I think they translate pretty similarly across like what they do.
Yeah.
So I usually just use my intuition. Like, okay, I have, who I would want to work with in my head. If it's like fertility, for example, a lot of the deities that I work with are good for fertility. So if I'm trying to, just send out abundant vibes for someone who is wanting to get pregnant.
Yeah. Let's see them eggs.
I can use a number of the deities that are good for fertility, but so I'll have them in my head and I'll like meditate a little bit before I do the spell and see which ones come through, basically.
Fertility, and I know we're going to get more specific, that'd be Venus, I guess. Or whatever. Venus was the Roman version, right? Or was Venus? Who is the Greek version? Who's the Greek goddess of fertility?
Of fertility? I know the goddess of love is Aphrodite.
I think that's fertility too.
Okay.
I also think Artemis, which I think is Roman too. I know the Roman one's better because randomly enough, like a lot of different organizations that I do research with, like a lot of their initiatives are named after Roman gods and goddesses, like the Artemis program, the Minerva program, those sorts of things.
Okay.
I think Artemis, she's cool as shit. She's the goddess of the hunt, but she's also, I think she's a goddess of fertility as well.
Oh.
Yeah. But we'll get into the specifics here because one of the things I do want to do in this talk, we're going to talk about the ones you invoke, but in the spirit of what we have been doing, I'd like to give a little bit of thought into the ones that kind of speak to me and see if any I can remember any that reach out to me specifically.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess we can leave this in if we want, but we're going to need another candle.
I know. Well, we should.
Let's take a step back to episode 4B, or was it 5B?
It was
episode 5.
Episode 5.
Yeah.
Witchcraft Part 2.
Right. So last time we talked about using white, and what was the other color?
Oh, we talked about a lot, but we ended up using white.
Yeah, to kind of clear the space.
I'm feeling light blue.
Light blue is one of the ones I think that I was interested in.
It's meditation, tranquility, peace, and healing.
I like it, especially after this week.
Yeah, gosh.
It'd be cool if the flame burned the color of the candle.
I know, that'd be awesome. Yeah, let's do this. So while this...
Now, can you light that with the white candle?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? You're going
that's
to
what
transfer the energy?
Yeah. All right.
Our altar has now got a light blue candle instead of a white candle.
And yeah, I think blue representing meditation and, tranquility, peace. We all need that right now. All right, and we have our altar here that we talked about in the last episode, and we had our white candle, but it just went out. So we decided to do a light blue candle because it is for tranquility and peace and meditation, and we feel like that is very necessary in the state of the world right now. So we are sending peace and tranquility to everyone who needs it.
Everybody chill out and take a bath.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed, we have another candle over there too. It's not anything special. I think it's a...
It's one of the Halloween Yankee candles.
Yeah, it's a Yankee candle. It's light blue though, so
Yeah.
we have a matching where we match.
Yeah.
Okay, so we left off kind of talking about the way that you use some of these gods. I don't want to use the word use. The way that you invoke these gods and goddesses and kind of draw on them. Let me ask you, which is you mentioned you picked 6 to talk about today?
7, actually.
7, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so my first inclination was to ask you what your favorite deity is, but that doesn't make much sense because you said that you invoke deities based on need.
Right.
So rather than your favorite, what would you say is the one you feel you need to invoke the most? Which are you most familiar with?
I work with them all a good even amount. I would say the number one that I like to call on the most, I think, would be Hecate, just because she was a Greek goddess, the goddess of witchcraft, magic, and crossroads. So Hecate, I was obsessed with Greek mythology as a kid, and I loved Hecate because she was, goddess of witchcraft and magic, but also she helped find Persephone, who is a Greek goddess of spring.
Okay.
And she ends up marrying Hades. So Hecate helped find Perseus in the underworld.
Oh, I love the stories that build the origins for where they come from.
Yeah. So I also love Hades. He's not on my list. I don't invoke him. I just like him.
I was actually thinking of Hades. We also have I have some background on hex, the word hex. I can't find Hecate's name, but the word hex comes from the German Hexe, I think, which means to practice witchcraft.
No way.
So I've got to think that's got to be connected with that.
Yeah, and now if you think of hex, it's not a good thing. You know, like I don't hex people. I
Oh,
never
right,
would
but
do that.
but when the origin of the word started, I'm sure it was very accusatory towards witches. So
Yes,
I'm sure that's
definitely.
where it came from. I also saw the word hag is derived from hexa. Mm-hmm. So there you go.
And like we talked about
German patriarchy.
on the witchcraft episode, if you Google witch, old hag who does black magic.
So I got to think.
Boo.
I've got to think Hecate is where that comes from.
That makes sense. What I also love about her is her symbols. So she has twin torches.
Okay.
You'll often see her depicted with those. But one of her symbols is dogs.
Oh, she's my favorite now.
Also serpents, which I love. Snakes. I have one tattooed on my chest. I love what they represent. They're misunderstood, but it represents rebirth. You're shedding the old to let the new in. And we're also in the year of the snake right now, which I think is really fitting. It's also a cycle year 9. If you add up 2025 to
Oh, is that how that works?
plus 0 plus 2 plus 5, it equals 9.
Ah.
And it goes up to 9. Some numerology, I only go up to 9. But 9 is the end of the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a huge year for everything being cleared away.
Which is interesting. When you mentioned Hecate and the snake, it reminded me of the Ouroboros. Do you know the Ouroboros?
No.
That's the image of the snake eating its own tail in like the infinity.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's called the Ouroboros.
Oh.
So again, I wonder if that's connected in any way because I think it's meant to demonstrate or it's meant to signify kind of life and death together, beginning and end together. You know what I mean? Shedding of skin and birth anew and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Transformation. So yeah, that's Hecate. I think of her as just like the mother, basically.
Yeah.
Because she's, so anytime I do magic or a spell, I carry her with me.
She's kind of overwatching. She's
yeah.
Okay. All right. Who's number 2?
Number 2, for me that I use a lot would be Kali.
Hindu goddess.
Yes.
Hindu goddess of destruction
She's,
and rebirth.
Yeah. Time, death, and destruction.
Nice.
And what I love about Kali is she has 4 arms, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she's holding a sword and a severed head, and then I forget the 2 other elements, but 2 represent destruction and 2 represent life.
Mm-hmm.
But I associate her with fear because she is the destroyer. So I have, we talked about my panic attacks and all that stuff, and that's very fear-based.
Sure.
So I would work with her. I even have a whole oracle deck that are just, it's a Kali oracle.
Yeah.
And I'll work with her and meditate with her when I want to just completely get rid of fear.
Something I think that Kali kind of exemplifies, and I think something a lot of people think when they think of gods and goddesses, is because Kali is so destruction focused, a lot of people assume she's an evil deity.
Right.
When it's not evil, it's just her nature.
Yeah, and
Really.
she's also seen in Hinduism as the divine mother.
Yeah.
And divine feminine energy.
Mhm.
So I love she's usually pictured with her legs on Shiva's chest.
You and I talked about Shiva and we talked about Kali, and because I thought Shiva was one of the goddesses of destruction too.
I want to say it's a god, actually.
Shiva's a god. Oh, I didn't know that. The only reason I thought it was a goddess, honestly, again, I mentioned this before, is because Shiva was a summon in Final Fantasy II.
Oh, that's right. I want to read that it was actually...
Well, what's funny, in the video game I mentioned, Final Fantasy II, many of the calls, the summons you can do, they are actually, now that I think back about it, gods and goddesses. Odin is one of the calls you can do.
Oh, cool.
Shiva's one. Leviathan is one. Leviathan, we were talking a little while ago about demons and angels, and I think Leviathan was one of the other generals of hell, if I remember right.
Yeah, she was a Hindu god.
Oh, then I stand corrected. Sorry, Shiva.
Yeah, the Hindu god of destruction. So I think it was actually Kali's partner.
And she's got her foot on his chest.
Yeah.
She's like, get the fuck down there.
Exactly.
Yep.
Divine mother.
Maybe Shiva's got a little bit of a humiliation kink. It's possible.
Who knows? But yeah, those are probably my top 2.
Okay.
Next would be Lakshmi.
Lakshmi, I'm not familiar with, but sounds Hindu or Tamil, Sri Lanka, something like that.
Hindu.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. She is the goddess of abundance, wealth, prosperity, and fertility.
Okay.
So I like working with Lakshmi. I have a statue of her on my altar.
Okay.
Because she's always pictured with gold coins in her hands, and it's abundance and prosperity because it's, giving. She gives this wealth to people, not only, financial,
sure,
but also just abundance in life.
Food,
and
health.
Yeah, and health. And she's always on a lotus.
Oh, okay.
And I love the lotus. Also have one tattooed on me because they blossom in the mud.
I was going to say, those aren't lotuses, loti? I don't know what the plural of lotus is. Isn't the lotus also symbolic of death? Am I making that up?
I'm sure it could be.
Yeah.
The
white lotus is what I'm thinking of, but I don't know. It doesn't matter. What you mentioned about Lakshmi, though, with the giving out gold, this might be a deep cut for a lot of listeners, but maybe not for others. There's a movie, I forget the name of the studio, but it's an animation studio out of Japan, and they did a movie years ago. I think it was picked up by Disney, called Spirited Away. Did you ever see that? You like it?
One of my favorites.
So No Face.
Yeah.
Simultaneously the creepiest, but also cutest characters ever.
Yes.
He's pretending to give out gold so he can eat people.
Yes.
So I wonder if that's connected to Lakshmi at all.
Ooh, I don't know.
Because he uses the gold as a decoy.
Yeah.
To draw people in and then consume them. Because if I remember right, in that movie, the characters are essentially the embodiment of the 7 deadly sins.
Oh my god, I didn't even.
I think that's what
realize
it was
that.
supposed to be. Yeah.
The first time I ever watched that, I was like in 3rd grade and fell in love with it.
I was in high school.
Wah, wah,
Yeah. But it is great. The train scene where they're just sitting on the train going somewhere is beautiful.
Well, I just loved all the like cooking scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the little, I always call them sprites. I don't know what they actually were. The little guys, little black fur balls, and they had the googly eyes and the stars around them. God, I love those things.
What's it called? Studio Ginobili? I almost said Ginobili, but that's Manu Ginobili. He plays for the Spurs, I think.
Oh.
Or he played for the Spurs. Okay, so Lakshmi was not done service. Lakshmi sounds awesome.
I also, there's, it's called the Devi Prayer, and it's the 108 names. It's all the deities in Hinduism.
Okay.
And it is literally one of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard, and it was the only thing that I could listen to when I was getting on planes.
Oh, really?
That calmed my anxiety.
It's a specific song?
Yes. So I want to talk about my girl Lilith.
Lilith. I know about Lilith. I know how she's been depicted. I know how she lives on in pop culture. Mm-hmm. My understanding of Lilith is that she isn't a demon, but she does kill people, as far as I know. I think the term that I'm looking for is succubus.
Yes.
Is that's what she is?
So there's a lot of different... She was hard to... Because the origins, it's very hard to trace back.
Right.
I found a lot of actually Jewish origins
for
her.
A lot. Oh, yeah, she was... Well, Lilith was... in terms of like the historicity of it, she was supposed to have been Adam's from Judea. Wife.
Yeah, so she was banished from the Garden of Eden.
Had to have that apple.
No, she didn't. She was Adam's first wife.
Oh, that's right. She was. Yeah.
She didn't obey him, so she got banished, and then she became Queen of Demons. Like, hell yeah.
That's what it was.
You know, don't fuck with a woman scorned.
Lilith is also a way cooler name than Eve.
Yeah,
Eve had to go get that goddamn apple.
I know. So she one of the origins is that she got banished because she didn't obey. So then she became queen of demons. Other people claimed that she was the wife of Satan, that she's a succubus.
Wait. Succubus. I know what that is, but other people might not. What's a succubus?
A really sexy female demon.
I mean, yeah.
Who?
For sure. But what does succubi do? I know succubi is the plural of succubus.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you say it?
Again, they feed on the life force of men specifically.
Yes.
Well, and
so watch out.
well, let's take the patriarchal perspective. They feed on the life force of men in a heterosexual type way. They seduce them, and then they don't eat them, but they feed on their life force until they're completely wasted away, and then move on.
Steal their soul.
So succubuses are like succubi are like the not banshees, but they do take souls, and they do it to people who deserve to have their souls taken, right?
Yes.
The people who they harm are actually being harmed for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And incubus is the male version of that, and they do the same thing.
But I think they do it to whoever. It's not so much like...
That tracks.
Yeah. I could be wrong.
That tracks, though.
So Lilith now became like really big in the Wiccan culture because she is a symbol of independence and female freedom. And so a lot of Wiccan practitioners use her for, spells and stuff. I also love because she has the element of like rebellion because she didn't want to obey to the husband. So she rebelled, and hell yeah.
Is Medusa ever mentioned in the same breath as Lilith? Because that was a similar thing. Because she was, I think, she got done dirty. I think her story was before she was a Gorgon. I think that's what they're called, Gorgons, the snakes for hair. She was a maiden who I think was raped by Poseidon.
I think you're right.
If I'm remembering right, got raped by Poseidon, and then she got punished for it.
Yeah.
I think that's her story. I could be wrong.
And then that's why she turned men to stone.
That's why she turned men to stone. Yeah. There's a shout out to, I'm going to give a shout out to an Instagram account that I love called Bad Space Comics. And whoever is behind it is an amazing artist. And they do a lot of like sci-fi and horror adjacent type stuff. And they did a one series where it's an alternate history of Medusa, where rather than get raped by Poseidon and then killed by Perseus, I think, she gets raped by Poseidon, but then rather than just kind of going away and being a monster, like whoever it was, Perseus comes for her and she cuts his fucking head off, and then she's just a badass, which it's very cool. Very cool.
Well, they both have the snake as one of their symbols, Lilith and Medusa. Lilith also, her symbols are the owl, the moon, and a rose, actually, I found, which...
That makes sense.
I liked that.
Well, I mean, I think probably because of the association with romantic relationships and the exploitation thereof, is my guess.
Right. And, roses are beautiful, and then they also have thorns. So
I like the idea of a snake and a rose right next to each other. It's perfect.
I have snakes and peonies on my chest.
Oh, and peonies.
Peonies. Oh, good. Did you think it said penises?
No, I thought you said I have snakes' panties. I was like, what?
Ew. First of all, I fucking hate that word.
It's not a great word. That's why I was surprised you said it.
No. On my chest, I have a snake tattooed, like I said, with 2 moons, crescent moons.
What kind of snake is there? Is it just a snake?
Just a snake.
Okay.
And peonies on there. My tattoo artist, shout out Lauren Lillian Tattoo. She's at Corpse Flower. Incredible.
Is she did all your ink?
Majority, yeah.
Yeah, it's good ink.
Or all of it since I've moved up here.
Okay.
Everything else in Florida, I have another
Your
artist.
tattoos have increased exponentially in the last few years.
Yes, they have.
Yeah.
Find you a good tattoo artist who you can barter with. All right, next on my list, which is very relevant to the time that we are, very relevant to the time of year that we are in, is Brigid.
Brigid. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me guess. Brigid? Mm-hmm. I'm going to guess Northern European, possibly Pict or Irish.
Celtic.
Where the name Bridget comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, she is a Celtic goddess of healing.
Okay.
Also of fire, fertility, poets, and blacksmiths. So why she's relevant right now? Because she's the goddess for the holiday Imbolc.
Oh.
Imbolc.
What is that?
That is on the Wheel of the Year, so one of the holidays that us Wiccans celebrate. It's the halfway point between winter and spring.
Oh, it is.
So it's celebrated February 1st and 2nd.
Oh, okay.
And Brigid's the goddess for Imbolc. And you...
I'm laughing because as soon as you said Bridget, the flame on our candle blew up.
Yeah, it did. Hello, goddess.
Neat.
Yeah, so there's a symbol for her is the Brigid's cross. It's her cross, right? So you can make them. I actually, Deb got me one when she went to Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just have it on my altar, which I love. And I used it the other day to do a spell. But so that cross like wards off evil. It's also a representation of her. But because Imbolc is the halfway point, like going from winter to spring, usually there's still snow on the ground. So the color white is a symbolism for that, like white flowers, milk, fresh bread, candles, and then of course her cross. You do like rituals for it to honor this time period, but to like kind of say goodbye to winter and invite spring back in.
Oh, she's my favorite. I'm at the point right now. I'm can't deal with winter anymore.
I know.
Just these doldrums of winter. It's just balls cold, and I just want to play in traffic every time I go outside because it's so cold.
And the no sunshine.
Yeah,
it's been freezing.
I'm starting to feel the seasonal affect disorder.
Same.
No, I didn't know Bridget was the goddess of all that. I knew that she was a goddess, but I didn't know that she... I mean, I can only guess where she was from her name, and I know Bridget's an Irish name, so my guess would be Irish or Scottish.
Yeah, she is most famously associated... No, I shouldn't say that. Bridget is a Celtic goddess, but she is associated with the holiday for what she represents.
Gotcha, okay.
So yeah, happy Imbolc to anyone who celebrates. I think it will be... Yeah, we'll release this on Imbolc, actually. All right, let's see what other deity I have in here. Oh, we talked briefly about Persephone.
Mm-hmm.
So I love Persephone, goddess of spring and nature. I also love that she's the queen of the underworld, married to Hades, so she's the light to his dark. She is represented by pomegranates, grain, torches, and deer. So she's really good, like I'll do on Beltane, which is another...
halfway. Okay.
And it's... I think it's halfway.
It's like the solstice is stolstice.
That is like...
What, the flame?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're listening.
They are.
Why don't you go log on to rss.com, Bridget, or whoever, or Persephone, get us some listeners.
Yeah. So I use Persephone with Beltane because it's the halfway point from spring to summer.
Okay.
And she's the goddess of spring, also associated with fertility. No shock there.
Yeah. So spring, halfway between spring and summer, you're looking at like what? Don't tell me. It's like May 3rd, May 5th, something like that?
May 1st is when it's celebrated, yeah.
It's like partying in Cinco de Mayo.
So, she... This is making me nervous.
Go ahead and give me a play-by-play. I'm. It's pretty fun.
This candle on our altar is out of control right now. So all these deities are...
They're pissed off because we only have 2 other chairs at the table. And like, Persephone's like, I'm sitting down. And then Hecate's like, no, I called 5s.
Right, so I only have one more deity on here.
Odin. We're not talking about Odin, are we?
No, we don't have to. I wasn't including Odin.
Everybody knows Odin. Like, I'm not interested in Odin.
Odin, Allfather, Norse mythology. Love him.
Has a goat. Very important.
He has his ravens. Hung himself from the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
my guy.
Thank you for all your contributions, Odin.
So last one is Bastet, or I also call her Bast.
Okay.
It's Baast, or Bastet is Bastet.
Okay.
So what origin?
Baast or Bastet?
Mm-hmm.
Two things. Well, the double A is Norwegian. Or no, it's double A is Dutch. Double vowel is very Dutch. I'm going to say Northern European, possibly Scandinavian.
Egyptian.
Oh, god damn, I should have known. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yes, so Bast is an Egyptian goddess, usually pictured as a black cat, or it's a female body with the head of a black cat. So I love black cats. You know, my cat passed away, my Bellatrix, but she was my familiar, and she will come back to me in another life.
Yeah. Do they come in another life, or will they come back in another form?
They can come back in other forms.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if I've been told that she's like good where she's at.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'll get her again.
She is a cat. She's probably just like, I'm fine. I'll see you later.
I know, but she was my heart and soul. I have her tattooed on my leg as well. So Bastet is the Egyptian goddess of the Egyptian goddess of protection, pleasure, and health. So I use Bastet for protection.
Mm-hmm.
I have a statue of her in her black cat form on my altar at home. I have one in my office. She's like my guardian. And then I also have... Well, I have a big statue of her on my big altar, and then I have a little statue of a black cat with the pentagram that I talked about, which I just think represents her in my money bowl. So she's my guardian.
Okay. Is the fact, you said it's sometimes a woman with a black cat head, but you said also she's the goddess of pleasure. Is that sexual pleasure?
I would think so, because especially in that time period. Like,
well, what's interesting, what made me think of it is that... The on the film podcast I do, Mary Wild, like she does. Yeah. So Mary Wild she's a film, I guess, analyst, and she has a very deep understanding of like Freudian psychology, other forms of psychology. And a lot of what I've talked with her about in kind of some of the older horror movies, like 70s and 80s, is that there's like a connection between death and sex in that. Like, I forget what like Eros and Thanatos. I think those are the two gods too that are they're not against one another, but they're kind of the yin and the yang. In that sexual pleasure is meant to be the antithesis to death, so people have sex to ward off death. So I kind of see that with Bast there, especially if she's like she probably assumes
protection and pleasure.
And she's vivacious, she's protecting. And I wonder, like, if I read into kind of the history of the hieroglyphs and kind of Egyptian gods and goddesses, if somebody like Anubis was seen as like almost not an enemy, but like a opponent, I guess. You know what I mean? Because Anubis is either seen as a black dog or a human with a black dog's head.
Right.
So I wonder if they're meant to be like the yin and the yang, the Eros and the Thanatos.
That'd be cool.
Because Anubis is he's the god of death, right? The god of the underworld.
That I don't know.
I'm almost positive Anubis is god of the underworld in Egypt, in Egyptian mythology. Let me have a look. Yep. Anubis is the god of funerary rites, protector of graves, and guide to the underworld in Egyptian religion. So I wonder if he and Bast are connected somehow.
Probably.
Yeah.
Especially protector of graves.
Interesting. I mean, it's just all real interesting to me, the kind of the yin and the yang of kind of sex and death, Eros and Thanatos, and how that manifests.
Yeah.
It manifests in the art of like ancient Egypt. It manifests in the way they thought of the gods themselves, and now it manifests in our art, even though we don't recognize it as such. And
I think it's cool. Like, I had no idea about Anubis.
It's not to get too graphic on this podcast, that's not what it's for, but like the idea with Eros and Thanatos is that the orgasm is essentially the only time in your life you forget about that you're going to die, which is why Eros and Thanatos are like contradictory. Yeah. So I mean, it sounds kind of funny when you throw it out at like surface level, but it actually like it makes kind of weird sense as to why you'd have two gods on why sex and death might be opposite to one another.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking, like how I said, a lot of the deities that I work with, mostly women, goddesses of fertility and divine feminine energy, divine mothers. And, we talked about Hades, and then Anubis sounds, he's the guardian of their underworld. It's interesting to see, like, the similarities across.
All right, so we did a little bit of background reading on Anubis and Bast before we move on to my favorite gods and goddesses. And I say favorite because I don't know shit about them, and I don't use them in any capacity. I just think they're cool. But it seems that there are two schools of thought about Anubis and Bast.
Okay.
One is that they are husband and wife, lovers. The other is that Bast is Anubis's mother.
Oh.
Which, in some ancient cultures, those two are not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Okay.
There's also, I would recommend that if you do Google Anubis and Bast, as I just did, do filter the results, because there is quite a bit of furry porn involving.
Oh, no.
There is. There's one, it's kind of PG. I may attach it to it, but there's one of them as almost like Japanese animation characters hugging in the desert, which is pretty great. It's kind of great. So I might attach that.
Oh, wow.
But this just goes to show that, I mean, the way that the gods and goddesses are depicted, it's all very interlinked. And Anubis and Bast seem to be in the Eros and Thanatos tradition.
Well, that's pretty cool. So I had my list of deities that I work with primarily. There were more, but I didn't want to take up too much time. We could maybe have like another episode of different deities.
I think it would be cool to do an episode of deities in each tradition.
Yeah.
Like, we're getting closer to the point where Patreon makes sense.
Yes.
So maybe after Series 1 and Series 2, some of the bonus episodes are Greek and Roman deities, Northern European deities, Celtic deities, those sorts of things.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Because I'm not familiar with the Roman, but you are. So that would be
I only remember the Roman because, other than art history minor, is that the Romans just stole everything from the Greeks, and I remember their names easier because the Greeks' names all sound the same. So I just kind of remember the Romans,
yeah, so we went over my favorite deities, how I use them in rituals, spells, why I invoke them. When I mentioned the symbols for each, I try to incorporate one of those when I'm doing a spell and like invoking them, to honor them.
Sure.
I don't know if I mentioned that. So now Kurt will tell us what deities he knows, or do you actually?
I know many.
Yeah.
So I know a lot. Again, this is all from, and I think I told the story on the. I've told the story about why I know this shit because I was an art history minor, didn't I? Okay, yeah, because I almost failed art. Yeah. So yes, I was an art history minor, and a lot of that has to do with gods and goddesses.
Right.
A lot of it, yeah.
So let me ask, what if you were practicing?
Oh, okay. Okay.
If you were going to do a spell or a ritual to bring in abundance and prosperity, do you have a deity that you're familiar with that you would use?
Yes. One jumped to mind, and I'm learning on this podcast. You scale your intuition.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's do this. You say specific things, I'll tell you what god or goddess, because here's prosperity. Dionysus.
Ooh.
Also Bacchus.
Okay.
I think Dionysus and Bacchus are the two of... I think Bacchus is the Roman version of Dionysus.
Okay.
Greek and Roman goddess? God. But female looking. God of wine and abundance, if I remember right.
Yeah.
But I remember, I can't be sure, but I think Dionysus's one of the symbols was the cornucopia, if I remember right.
Yes.
It is, yeah. So there you go. And grapes,
Look
obviously.
at you.
Yeah,
yes.
So I knew that one. So if we're doing abundance, I'm going Dionysus because I can get loaded while I do it.
Right. Fair enough. Valid.
I like this. This is a good way to
cheers to that.
Cheers. Thanks, Dino.
Okay,
They would definitely have nicknames too. His would be Dino.
Dino. When I invoke Lilith, I usually use her whenever I'm doing a spell or a ritual that involves shadow work.
Right.
Shadow work being, working through those dark parts of yourself that you might not like, or parts of yourself that you might hate, and you are trying to honor them and set them free.
Right.
what would be your god for that?
So the first one that came to mind, but it was related to kind of, I was thinking addressing my fear itself, which has one answer, but I don't think that's the right answer. I'm going to go looking into like the parts of myself that I know are there that I don't like.
Yeah.
I would say probably Aries, just because I know there's a part in there that can be violent, and there are parts where like I would be happy to be violent, but I try to resist those demons in oneself. Not that I'm like ready to claw somebody's face off any given time. I think it's just a matter of recognizing that as humans we're just upright apes. That's all we are, and like the only thing keeping us from killing one another is like our recognition of humanity and others, and
right.
So I would say Aries probably. I would also say I'm gonna bite off you a little bit and say maybe Kali.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look into destruction, because it's the only way. I think I wrote one time in a blog a long time ago about my mom's death. Like the only way that you can understand like horrible things is to look into the abyss. Like it's the only way to really address it. So that's what I think with Kali and with Aries. So I'd go with those two.
I like that answer. Okay, last one. If you were doing a ritual or spell to invoke protection for you or someone else.
Ooh. Protection. There's a couple I could do here. Okay, I'm going to start Greek again. I'm going to say Hades. A lot of darkness in my gods. I like that.
Why Hades?
I think kind of the same thing in that there's almost like I like the yin and the yang of it, that there's this Hades is this god of the underworld, god of death, I think, and everything. So like I guess the dispatching of one's enemies, the people that mean to do you harm, Hades would be in charge of that, I think. But if we're looking for a more positive spin on it, I'm gonna go This is going This is going to be way off the deep end here. It's going to seem like it is, but I remember it very clearly from middle school, learning it in middle school. I believe it's an Aztec god, Quetzalcoatl.
Yes.
Yeah, or Quetzalcoatl. People call him Quetzalcoatl, which I think is the kind of the main god in Aztec theology or mythology. But I also know that Quetzalcoatl was the protector of Tenochtitlan, I think, and those sorts of things. I would also say lesser gods, but just again from art history. Do you know what the Lamassu are?
Yes.
Yeah, so the Lamassu are my favorite art in all the world. Like I
haven't heard that.
The Lamassu or Lamassi?
Yes.
Yeah. So the Lamassu,
forever.
Again, Fertile Crescent. They were in the Fertile Crescent, but the Lamassu are, they were seen as, I think, lesser deities. They weren't major gods, but they were lesser deities that had the body of a lion, wings, and the head of a man. So I guess kind of like a Pegasus with a human head, sort of.
Or like a 3/4 centaur?
Yeah. Exactly. It's exactly right. 3/4 centaur.
With wings?
But it was... they were always at the gates of Assyrian temples. So they were always etched into the stone at the edges of Assyrian temples.
You know what I just thought of? Never-ending Story.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's almost like exactly, but they're the coolest looking things. Like they're very, very cool. They're like there's an actual one in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, it's so cool looking. Just imagining it painted was cool.
Yeah.
So the Lamassu would be one too, because they were meant to protect you from outsiders and protect you from people who mean to do you harm. So I'd say the Lamassu too. We're gonna go Quetzalcoatl and the Lamassu. Yeah, those are my gods. Those are my gods and goddesses. I on one hand, they're very stereotypical, being Greek and Roman. On the other hand, kind of just something I remembered, and especially Quetzalcoatl and the Lamassu, it just reminds me of a good time in my life, and I would invoke those.
Yeah. Well, I think that concludes our deity episode.
I think so, and note that the candle did not flicker when I invoked the Lamassu. They're like, whatever, dude.
Wait, this candle has been so chill.
It has been very chill since I started talking. But isn't the rose candles meant to be like peace of heart, right? So
yeah.
And yeah, Hades is like, that ain't my shit.
Right.
And Lamisil and Tenoctitl or Quetzalcoatl are like, no, piss off.
Yeah.
Or if it was Quetzalcoatl, he would say fuck off in Spanish because he was from Mexico City.
Yeah, well, this was fun. I liked this discussion of deities.
This is one of my favorite things that I studied in college was the history of mythology and the art associated with it. So I would love to do other episodes just on demons, just on different kinds of gods. I want to do one on the different choruses of angels, all of it.
Yeah. We definitely will. And we want to thank those of you who have sent in your emails. We are going to talk about those on the next episode.
Good questions, too.
Yes, we really appreciate you guys writing. We hope you send more. Yeah, so we just really appreciate all of you listeners and are happy that you are here joining us weekly.
And hopefully pretty soon we're going to have a little bit of an expansion, not just in the technology we're going to be using. A little behind the scenes is that Becca and I share a mic, which makes it a lot of fun to edit. But pretty soon we're going to upgrade the Braddock basement recording studio, and we're going to upgrade our technological game in terms of online presence too. So there's some things coming forward that we're going to send out to everybody to kind of get involved, like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast.
Yes, so we hope everyone is, again, we mentioned it a little earlier, the state of the world right now is not great. And for those who are in need of support and are listening, you can also email us and we can give any resources or just be a listening ear. We want to be supportive and really, send love out to everyone right now.
And I would also say, and Becca and I have not talked about this, but I think that she'll be open to it, and that is if you send emails that express the need for support, there are other people out there probably who need the same thing. I mean, I'd be happy to talk about those emails on the podcast if you're okay with it, and talking about maybe a spiritual journey that might help in certain ways.
Yeah.
We got your back.
Dark times.
Dark times, but strong people. I think as long as you got each other's backs, everything's going to be okay in the end. Humans tend to trend upward, and I think we're going to do that this time too.
Yeah. We are sending love if you are open, and peace and tranquility. And this last candle, we lit a pink candle, but we didn't talk about it. But its properties were creativity and what was the last thing? Emotional well-being.
That's why I picked it, yeah.
Oh, and matters of the heart, yes. So we are sending love to anyone who needs it. And we hope you tune in next week.
We're going to be talking about my acupuncture experience.
Yes, acupuncture part 2.
Yeah. Take care, everybody. Quetzalcoatl says hi.
Good night.